Irresistible is a new movie written and directed by Jon Stewart, and it stars a pretty big cast. You got Steve Carrell, Rose Byrne, Chris Cooper, Topher Grace, Natasha Lyonne, Mackenzie Davis, and it's about a political insider played by Steve Carell who sees a video of Chris Cooper giving an impassioned speech, and Carell gets the idea, hey, if we run Chris Cooper as a candidate in an election, he could win, and we could get back on the inside of DC. And then Rose Byrne comes in, does her own thing for the other side, and it's a big political comedy written and directed by Jon Stewart. Now, Jon Stewart is someone that I've really liked him since high school, I would say. He's one of the few people who's kind of developed my sense of humor in a way. So it's like, oh, he's going back to his political roots with this movie and his comedy roots at the same time. So it's like, oh, that's really interesting as well. And again, pretty big cast: Steve Carell, Rose Byrne, Chris Cooper, just to name a few. And overall, this movie's not very good, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in this movie. Not to say that it's overall terrible, it's just there's some things about this movie that's I kind of mixed feelings about as a whole. Let's start off with the good, at least. The acting is pretty good overall. Chris Cooper is really good. I would say he's actually the heart and soul of the movie. Rose Byrne, she's pretty funny in the movie. She's one of those few actresses who she's really good in comedies. Bridesmaids, Neighbors, Spy, and now this. So you can tell that in this movie she's having a lot of fun here. And for a while, Steve Carell is good. I usually like Steve Carell. But here, it's weird. I kind of like him at first, but then as the movie goes on, he becomes worse. Like, he becomes a lot more smarmy and gross throughout the entire movie. But I feel like that's kind of the point of the movie, kind of like saying all these political insiders are really just, gross people who are only trying to fulfill their own purposes rather than actually try to do anything different or try to get the people interested in what they're trying to say, I would say. Which kind of brings me to the main thing about this movie is the twist. I did not like the twist at first. I kind of thought, huh? What? How? Why? Kind of just didn't really make sense to me. But when someone explains the twist in the movie, it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And, it's kind of a big F you to basically everyone in this movie, in a way. Because it's like, oh, it says that, these parties kind of do things that think, oh, if I do this, it's going to be really helpful. But either A, they don't really do much, or B, everyone who's involved is just looking awkward. So it's like, that's kind of interesting, overall, with the twist. But the other thing, too, with this movie is that what we later find out is the main twist in the movie, and, like, what the movie's really about. It kind of puts some things in perspective that I'm like, why would you do that if that's not really the main focus? Like, Chris Cooper, he's talking about illegal immigration at the beginning of the movie. But yet, there's hardly any character who isn't white in this movie. There's one for 1 second. And so it's like, oh, this is about illegal immigration or legal immigration or whatever. But then the actual twist is actually about something completely different. So it's like, oh, you kind of just threw that under the bus. And you kind of just threw it out there, kind of brought it up, and you don't really bring it up again, unfortunately. Overall, also the cons as well. There are a lot of characters in this movie who are very one-dimensional. Mackenzie Davis, she's not very good in this movie, unfortunately. She's not having a good year. First The Turning, and now this. Wow. She's very bland. Almost everyone else is kind of one-dimensional in this movie. I mentioned Topher Grace and Natasha Lyonne are in this movie. They barely appear throughout this entire movie, and I kind of forgot they were in there when Topher Grace appeared. I'm like, oh, right, you were in this thing. And same thing with Natasha Lyonne. It's like, oh, right, you were in this. And also the jokes, they were kind of hit and miss. Like, I'd say it becomes less and less funny as the movie goes on. And usually I don't like that. I kind of like a nice, even spread of comedy. So it's like, I'm laughing in the first act, second act, and third act. But in this movie, it's like, it's downward slope, I would say. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but whatever. But it's like each act is just becoming less and less funny. And I never would have expected that from Jon Stewart, because Jon Stewart's really funny. Almost everyone involved in this movie is really funny, unfortunately. So, overall, you can resist Irresistible, honestly. It's a movie where it knows what it wants to be, but it kind of just takes other things for granted, I would say. It's a movie that does provide interesting insights, but at the same time, it's not that interesting of a movie, I would say. You can probably learn more about this, ironically, on an episode of The Daily Show rather than a movie. So, again, it's not bad by any means. The acting's fine, and it's kind of funny, and it does make things interesting, but I kind of feel like something shouldn't have happened in this movie that actually did happen. I will give Irresistible 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So, what's your favorite political comedy? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat, and stay safe.